83 seconds. That's exactly how long it took Senator Elizabeth Warren to expose $847,000 in previously hidden Russian financial connections and reduce Pam Bondi to complete silence. Not uncomfortable pause, silence. Not searching for words, silence. Complete, devastating silence. January 4th, inside the Hart Senate office building, confirmation hearing room 216 transformed from routine political theater into a precision demolition. Warren didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The documents spoke for themselves. $847,000. Think about that number. We're not talking about campaign contributions you forgot to report. We're not talking about speaking fees that slipped through disclosure cracks. We're talking about systematic financial entanglements with Russian entities that somehow never appeared on any official documentation until Warren's team found them. The moment happened at exactly 11:17 a.m. Warren opened a manila folder, Bondi shifted in her chair, and then came the cascade: financial records, communication timestamps, wire transfer documentation, all laid out in 83 seconds of methodical destruction. Bondi's legal team had prepared for hostile questions. They had prepared for political grandstanding. They had not prepared for Warren to arrive with a complete financial autopsy that traced every dollar back to its source. According to sources familiar with the hearing preparation, Bondi's confirmation team spent weeks anticipating traditional confirmation battles, foreign policy disagreements, judicial philosophy debates, standard partisan warfare. Nobody anticipated Warren would transform the hearing room into a forensic accounting laboratory. The silence that followed those 83 seconds stretched for what felt like minutes. Senators on both sides of the committee table leaned forward. Gallery observers stopped taking notes and simply stared. Even the stenographer paused her transcription. This wasn't political theater anymore. This was accountability in real time. And if you're watching from anywhere in America right now, comment below and let us know your state, because what you're witnessing is what happens when preparation meets the moment of truth. Warren didn't just ask questions, she presented evidence. Bondi didn't just face scrutiny, she faced a reckoning. That 83-second window changed everything that came after. Those 83 seconds didn't happen by accident. Warren's demolition of Bondi's confirmation required months of methodical detective work that began the moment Bondi's nomination was announced in November. According to sources familiar with Warren's preparation process, her team immediately triggered what they call a full-spectrum financial audit, not the standard opposition research that focuses on political positions and past statements. This was forensic accounting designed to map every financial relationship, every business connection, every potential conflict of interest stretching back 15 years. Warren's chief investigator, a former Treasury Department analyst who specializes in tracking foreign financial flows, started with Bondi's most recent disclosure forms. The first red flag appeared within hours: consulting fees listed as domestic income that traced back to firms with documented Russian ownership structures. Here's where it gets interesting. Bondi's legal team had submitted what they believed were comprehensive financial disclosures, standard practice, routine compliance, but Warren's team wasn't looking at what was disclosed. They were mapping what was missing. The breakthrough came in December, when Warren's investigators accessed corporate filing databases in Delaware and Nevada, shell companies, layered ownership structures, financial instruments designed specifically to obscure the ultimate source of payments. And at the end of every trail, Russian entities with established ties to state influence operations. $847,000 across 17 separate transactions over 4 years. Each transaction structured just below federal reporting thresholds that would have triggered automatic government scrutiny, each payment routed through intermediary firms that existed only on paper. Think about what that level of sophistication implies. We're not talking about oversight. We're not talking about paperwork mistakes. We're talking about systematic financial architecture designed to hide the source of nearly $1 million from the American people and their elected representatives. Warren's team discovered that Bondi's law firm had received retainer payments totaling $312,000 from firms that listed their primary business as energy consulting, standard legal work. except those energy consulting firms had never operated a single energy project. Their only documented business activity was receiving wire transfers from Russian energy corporations and immediately transferring equivalent amounts to American law firms and consulting groups. But here's where Bondi's preparation strategy completely failed. Her confirmation team had focused entirely on defending her judicial philosophy and prosecutorial record. They had prepared talking points about her commitment to American justice and her history of fighting corruption. Nobody had prepared answers for questions about why she had accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars from financial networks that federal investigators had already identified as Russian influence conduits. The timeline tells the story. November 15th, nomination announced. November 16th, Warren's team began their audit. December 8th, first shell company connections identified. December 22nd, complete financial map completed showing $847,000 in Russian-connected payments. January 2nd, Warren's office requested a private meeting with Bondi's representatives to discuss financial disclosure irregularities. That meeting never happened. Bondi's team declined the request, assumed Warren was bluffing, assumed she had uncovered standard political opposition research that could be dismissed with prepared talking points about partisan attacks. They were wrong. Warren had uncovered a financial web that connected Bondi directly to the same Russian influence networks that had been the subject of federal investigations for the past 3 years. The same networks that had been systematically targeting American legal and political institutions with precisely the kind of payments Bondi had been receiving. January 3rd, the day before the hearing, Warren's team completed their final verification, cross-referenced banking records, confirmed corporate ownership structures, validated wire transfer documentation, every number checked, every connection verified, every document authenticated. Bondi walked into that hearing room believing she faced routine confirmation questions. Warren walked in with evidence of systematic financial entanglement with Russian state interests that Bondi had never properly disclosed. The 83 seconds that destroyed Bondi's confirmation were the inevitable result of months of methodical investigation meeting willful ignorance. Warren had set the trap. Bondi had walked directly into it. $847,000. Let's break down exactly what that money represents and why every dollar creates a potential national security crisis. The largest single payment, $215,000, came through Apex Energy Consultants in March 2023. Apex exists only as a Delaware corporation with no physical address, no employees, and no documented energy projects. Its sole documented business activity was receiving a wire transfer of $215,000 from Nord Stream Legal Holdings, a subsidiary of Gazprom's International Legal Division, and immediately transferring that exact amount to Bondi's law firm as a legal retainer. Think about what that transaction structure reveals. This isn't consulting work. This isn't legitimate business. This is money laundering with legal fees as the vehicle. The second largest payment, $183,000, followed an identical pattern through Pacific Resource Group in August 2023. Pacific Resource Group listed its business as Mineral Rights Consulting. Federal records show it has never filed a single mineral rights claim, never conducted a geological survey, never employed a single geologist. Its documented business activity consists entirely of receiving payments from Russian mining conglomerates and transferring equivalent amounts to American legal and consulting firms. Bondi's team had characterized these payments as routine legal work for energy and mining clients, standard corporate representation. Except when Warren's investigators traced the clients, they discovered something remarkable. Every single client that had supposedly hired Bondi's firm for legal representation was either a shell company with documented Russian ownership or a subsidiary of Russian state-controlled enterprises currently under federal investigation for influence operations. But here's where the concealment becomes systematic rather than coincidental. Each payment was structured to avoid federal reporting requirements. Wire transfers over $10,000 trigger automatic Treasury Department scrutiny. Payments to law firms over $50,000 require enhanced due diligence reporting. Bondi received 17 payments, each precisely calibrated to slip through regulatory gaps. $215,000 split into 4 payments of $53,750 each. $183,000 divided into three payments of $61,000 each. Mathematical precision designed to avoid detection. According to Treasury Department regulations, this payment structuring constitutes evidence of intentional regulatory evasion, not oversight, not accident. Deliberate financial architecture designed to conceal the source and purpose of foreign payments to American officials. The security clearance implications are devastating. Every individual seeking sensitive government positions must disclose foreign financial relationships that could create conflicts of interest or vulnerability to foreign influence. Bondi's disclosure forms listed 0 foreign financial relationships, 0 Russian business connections, 0 payments from entities with foreign state ties. Federal investigators who spoke on background described Bondi's financial disclosure as either catastrophically incomplete or deliberately misleading. There is no third option. Either she failed to conduct basic due diligence on nearly $1 million in legal fees, or she knowingly concealed foreign financial relationships from federal investigators. Legal experts familiar with foreign agent registration requirements confirmed that Bondi's financial relationships triggered mandatory disclosure obligations under multiple federal statutes. The Foreign Agents Registration Act requires disclosure of any financial relationship with foreign entities that could influence policy positions or government decisions. The Ethics in Government Act requires disclosure of any financial relationship that could create conflicts of interest in government service. Bondi disclosed neither the payments nor the clients. She listed routine domestic legal work where federal records show systematic Russian financial entanglement. But the concealment extends beyond financial disclosure violations. Communication records obtained through congressional subpoena show Bondi's firm received detailed briefings about Russian energy policy positions, mineral rights strategies, and legal challenges to American sanctions regimes. These briefings were directly connected to the legal retainer payments from Russian-controlled entities. Think about what that means. While receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars from Russian state interests, Bondi was simultaneously receiving confidential briefings about Russian strategic positions on American energy and sanctions policy. She was being paid by Russian interests to understand Russian strategic priorities. The pattern becomes clear when you map the timeline. Payment received, briefing scheduled, legal work completed, payment received, briefing scheduled. 17 iterations of the same sequence over 4 years, not legal representation. Intelligence collection with legal fees as cover. Warren's investigation revealed that Bondi's law firm had produced legal memoranda analyzing American sanctions policy, energy export regulations, and mineral rights enforcement mechanisms. Each memorandum was completed within weeks of receiving payments from Russian-controlled entities. Each memorandum addressed legal questions that directly impacted Russian strategic interests in American policy. According to federal law enforcement officials familiar with foreign influence investigations, this payment and briefing pattern matches established Russian intelligence collection methodologies. Pay American professionals for legitimate work that requires access to sensitive information, then use that access to gather intelligence about American policy positions and regulatory strategies. Bondi wasn't just receiving Russian money. She was providing Russian intelligence services with analysis of American legal and regulatory systems that could be used to circumvent sanctions, challenge energy policies, and undermine mineral rights enforcement. The $847,000 wasn't payment for legal services. It was payment for access to American legal expertise, policy analysis, and regulatory insights that Russian state interests could use to advance their strategic objectives against American interests. When Warren laid out these financial connections in 83 seconds, she wasn't just exposing hidden money. She was exposing a systematic intelligence operation that had been operating through the American legal system for 4 years, and Bondi had been the unwitting or willing American asset at the center of that operation. That's why the silence was so devastating. Bondi couldn't claim ignorance without admitting incompetence. She couldn't claim innocence without admitting complicity. Warren had eliminated every possible defense except the truth, and the truth was worse than anyone anticipated. The moment Warren finished her 83-second presentation, Legal experts across Washington began confirming what everyone in that hearing room already understood. This wasn't political theater anymore. This was a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time. Constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley, speaking within hours of the hearing, called Warren's evidence presentation unprecedented in confirmation hearing history. According to Turley, the systematic nature of the financial concealment combined with the intelligence collection pattern creates what he termed a clear and present danger to national security that makes confirmation impossible under existing federal law. Former Treasury Department Inspector General Eric Thorson went further. In a statement released Tuesday evening, Thorson confirmed that the payment structuring patterns Warren documented constitute textbook examples of what federal investigators classify as foreign influence money laundering. Thorson stated that Treasury Department protocols would have immediately flagged these transactions for investigation had they been properly reported through required channels. Think about what that means. Federal law enforcement experts are confirming that Bondi's financial relationships represent exactly the kind of foreign influence operation that existing federal systems are designed to detect and prevent. The only reason these relationships weren't detected earlier was systematic concealment designed specifically to avoid federal scrutiny. National security expert Fiona Hill provided the most devastating expert analysis. According to Hill, the briefing and payment pattern Warren documented represents a sophisticated Russian intelligence collection operation that successfully penetrated American legal and policy circles for 4 years. Hill confirmed that the methodologies match established Russian intelligence services protocols for recruiting American assets through legitimate professional relationships. But here's where the countdown pressure becomes critical. The Senate Judiciary Committee scheduled the confirmation vote for Friday, January 7th at 2 p.m. That gives senators exactly 72 hours to digest the implications of Warren's evidence and decide whether to confirm a nominee whose financial relationships appear to constitute a successful Russian intelligence operation. Senator Chuck Grassley, ranking Republican committee member, requested emergency briefings from FBI counterintelligence officials to assess the national security implications of Bondi's Russian financial connections. According to sources familiar with the briefing request, Grassley specifically asked FBI officials to confirm whether Bondi's financial relationships trigger existing protocols for foreign influence investigations. The real-time reactions from other committee members revealed the immediate political calculus. Democratic senators began coordinating statements calling for withdrawal of the nomination. Republican senators requested closed-door briefings to understand the full scope of the evidence. Nobody defended the financial relationships Warren had documented. Senator Lindsey Graham, typically a reliable administration ally, issued a statement calling Warren's evidence deeply troubling and requiring thorough investigation before any confirmation vote. Graham requested that the Justice Department provide detailed briefings about Russian influence operations targeting American legal institutions. But the strategic silence from Bondi's team speaks volumes about their recognition of the evidence's devastating implications. No immediate pushback, no alternative explanations for the $847,000 in Russian-connected payments, no defense of the payment structuring that avoided federal reporting requirements. According to sources familiar with confirmation strategy, Bondi's legal team spent Tuesday evening attempting to craft responses to Warren's evidence presentation. By Wednesday morning, they had concluded that no response could adequately address the systematic financial concealment without either admitting deliberate regulatory evasion or claiming professional incompetence that would disqualify confirmation. The procedural options available to the committee create additional pressure. Any committee member can request postponement of the Friday vote to allow additional investigation. Any senator can formally request FBI background check updates based on newly discovered information. Any committee member can demand closed-door testimony from Bondi addressing the specific financial relationships Warren documented. Former White House counsel Don McGahn confirmed that the evidence Warren presented triggers mandatory ethics review protocols that could indefinitely delay confirmation proceedings. According to McGahn, federal ethics regulations require complete investigation of any financial relationships that could create conflicts of interest or vulnerability to foreign influence before confirmation can proceed. Historical precedent adds weight to expert consensus. The last confirmation nominee to face comparable foreign financial entanglement questions was Commerce Secretary nominee Wilbur Ross in 2017. Ross faced months of additional scrutiny over significantly smaller financial relationships with foreign entities. The scope of Russian financial connections Warren documented exceeds anything seen in previous confirmation battles. Legal ethics expert Kathleen Clark provided perhaps the most definitive expert assessment. Clark confirmed that Bondi's financial disclosure violations alone justify nomination withdrawal, regardless of the underlying Russian connections. According to Clark, federal law requires nominees to err on the side of over-disclosure rather than concealment, and Bondi's systematic failure to report foreign financial relationships represents disqualifying ethical violations independent of any national security concerns. The expert consensus is clear. Multiple authorities from constitutional law, national security, federal law enforcement, and legal ethics have confirmed that Warren's evidence presentation documents systematic violations of federal disclosure requirements, potential foreign agent registration violations, and financial relationships that create unacceptable national security risks. 72 hours. That's how long the Senate has to decide whether to confirm a nominee whose financial relationships appear to represent a successful 4-year Russian intelligence operation. Every expert who has reviewed Warren's evidence has reached the same conclusion. Confirmation is no longer possible. The only question is whether Bondi withdraws voluntarily or forces a committee vote that will permanently damage everyone who supports her nomination. The ripple effects from Warren's 83-second demolition are already reshaping how Washington approaches confirmation battles. This isn't just about Bondi anymore. This is about establishing a new standard that will haunt every future nominee who thinks they can hide foreign financial relationships from Senate scrutiny. Within 24 hours of the hearing, 3 other pending nominations requested postponement of their confirmation hearings to conduct what they termed comprehensive financial disclosure reviews. Defense Department nominee Patricia Reynolds announced her team was conducting additional vetting of consulting relationships with overseas clients. Commerce Department nominee Robert Chen requested extra time to trace corporate ownership structures in consulting contracts dating back 10 years. Think about what that immediate response reveals. Other nominees are terrified that Warren's forensic accounting methodology will be applied to their financial histories. They're not requesting delays because they're guilty. They're requesting delays because they finally understand the depth of scrutiny Warren has established as the new confirmation standard. The precedent Warren set extends far beyond Russian connections. Her investigation methodology demonstrates that Senate committees now possess the capability to map any nominee's complete financial history through shell companies, intermediary firms, and layered ownership structures that previous confirmation processes never penetrated. According to sources familiar with Senate Judiciary Committee operations, Warren's team has already begun sharing their investigative protocols with other committee staff. The forensic accounting techniques, database access methods, and corporate ownership mapping tools that exposed Bondi's Russian connections are being systematized for use in all future confirmation battles. Senator Ted Cruz, typically focused on judicial philosophy and constitutional interpretation, announced that his staff would be conducting Warren-style financial audits for all future Supreme Court nominees. Cruz specifically cited the need to ensure that foreign influence operations cannot penetrate the highest levels of American judicial institutions through the kind of systematic concealment Bondi attempted. But the political transformation runs deeper than enhanced vetting procedures. Warren's demonstration that 83 seconds of methodical evidence presentation can destroy months of confirmation preparation has fundamentally altered the risk calculation for nominees with questionable financial histories. The message being sent is unmistakable. Full financial transparency isn't optional anymore. Complete disclosure of every foreign financial relationship isn't suggested. It's required. And any attempt to conceal or minimize foreign connections will be treated as evidence of disqualifying deception rather than minor oversight. Legal ethics experts confirm that Warren's precedent establishes disclosure expectations that exceed previous federal requirements.